Well, good morning, good afternoon if you're in the Far East, and good middle of the night if you're joining us from the United States. My name is Tom Jenkins. It's my great privilege to welcome you to this webinar. I'm going to wait a few seconds whilst the attendees spool in, and we'll get going in 10 or 20 seconds. Okay, well, we've got several people in the room now, so welcome again. It's my great privilege to be here with David Edwards, Dermot O'Neill, and Jackie Fox. We're waiting for a couple of others to come and join us, but my main purpose of today is to look at the UK and Ireland as destinations. This is very much in honour, really, of next year's Britain and Ireland marketplace, which will be taking place in January of next year. And I would urge everybody who wants to take part in that, both as buyers and suppliers, to register as soon as possible. Last year we filled it, and this year we want to start bookings as early as possible. So this is why you have the screen at the moment. I'm going to stop the share and we'll go straight back into the panel here. Connor, very nice of you to join us, and Vera is here as well. So we've got a full panel. This is great. I'm going to start just by asking everyone just to introduce themselves very briefly and explain what they do. I'll start off, if I may, with David. David, do you want to have a quick word?
Thank you very much indeed, Tom. So good morning, one and all. So I am privileged enough to do work each month with ETOA, as well as serving a number of other clients through my Scattered Clouds company. But today, I'm going to be talking about trends and prospects, more of which in a moment.
Thank you. And Jackie.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Tom, for the invite. I'm Jackie Fox, one of the twins and co-founder of Twin. We're based in London, and we predominantly deal with international educational groups, so not so much leisure, but we do have a connection to obviously the travel industry. So lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. And Dermot.
Tom, good morning, everyone. I'm Dermot O'Neill. I'm Joint Managing Director with AC Group, which is AC Tours and AC Lux. So we do destination management services across UK, Ireland, and France for group tours and for luxury FIT, primarily from North America, but also group tours from continental Europe and as far as Australia also.
Fantastic. Connor, welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself very briefly?
Thank you, Tom. I'm the director of globaldreamtravel.co.uk. We're based just outside London. We offer group tours as well as small luxury private tours to the North American market, and as well European connections that we have in Spain, Italy, France, Germany, working in those languages as well. And we work as a DMC at the kind of higher end of the market. So yeah, that's what we do.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Vera.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the Group Marketing and ESG Strategy Director for Tour Partner Group, and we are an inbound DMC for the UK, Ireland, and the Nordics, and we offer FIT groups and meetings and incentives as well.
A full panoply of product. Thank you very much indeed. Well, look, we'll start, if I may, with David Edwards. David, before you start, I just need to say one thing, which is there is a question and answers facility on your screen, and if you could type any questions you've got into that, I'd be very grateful. It enormously helps me if I have topics of conversation that you want to hear about. It helps the conversation flow. David, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tom. So for the next 10 or so minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about inbound tourism to Britain and Ireland, both trends and prospects. We will cover some of the historic and more recent inbound trends. We'll take a look at what some of the latest forecasts are suggesting for the next few years. And then I'm going to devote a couple of moments to talking about that all-important US market for both Britain and indeed Ireland. So let's begin by looking at how Europe as a whole and the UK, so Europe is the red line and the UK is the blue line, have been performing since the start of 2020. And what we're doing on this chart is comparing each month with the equivalent month of 2019. So the learnings that we can take from this slide are, firstly, how awful the pandemic was for our sector, but also that the UK struggled rather more so than did Europe throughout 2020 and 2021, but that since spring of 2022, both Europe and the UK bobbling along a little bit below where we were in 2019. I would love to have been able to include Ireland on this chart, but sadly there isn't consistent data throughout the pandemic period for the Republic of Ireland. One of the other insights I think we take from this chart is that we're definitely still not back above where we were in 2019. But of course, tourism isn't just about international arrivals. What we're looking at here is hotel occupancy in Europe and the UK since the start of 2020. So the colour coding of the lines is just the same as it was on the preceding slide, but here we can see that the UK has actually been outperforming Europe when it comes to hotel occupancy. We can also see that for the past 18 or so months, that seasonal pattern has really re-established where it would be expected to be. Now, clearly, we've got domestic tourism going on here, but we have also got government contracts for refugees and asylum seekers. So we've not perhaps got a usual hotel market at the present time. Now let's really look back in history. And here I'm showing you trends in the volume, that's the left-hand axis and the red line, and the inflation adjusted value, that's the blue line, right-hand axis, for inbound tourism to the UK since 1980. What we can see is that the long-term picture was certainly one of growth. We can also see, however, that things peaked actually pre-2019. So we were in a bit of a plateau period just ahead of the pandemic. And we can also see that at the end of last year, we weren't back to where we were in 2019. And the provisional data, because revised final data for the UK is due to be published on Friday morning of this week, but that provisional data suggests that the volume had recovered to 91% of its pre-pandemic maximum and the real value to 85% of its pre-pandemic high watermark. Now, visitors come from overseas to the UK and indeed Ireland for many different reasons. Here we're looking at trends in inbound to the UK since 1978 by Journey Purpose, and the most common reason to visit our shores is for a holiday. That's the red line we see on the chart. It's not all been plain sailing over the last 40 or so years. We can see that big dip, late 90s, early noughties, but then really good recovery, but plateauing just ahead of the pandemic. So looking at those provisional 2023 figures compared with the high watermark pre-pandemic, holiday travel, that was back to 94%, but visits to friends and relatives, they really were in record territory by the end of last year, whereas inbound tourism for business, miscellaneous reasons, and indeed study tourism, they were still lagging somewhat at between 70 and 74% of where they had once been. Let's take a look at the top 10 source markets for inbound holiday visits, both the volume and the value for the UK. So this first panel we're looking at is taking us back to 2019. And we can see that when we're looking at volume, 7 out of those top 10 markets were short-haul European markets, but we've got the USA in there, we've got China and Australia. When it comes to spending, those long-haul visitors tend to stay longer and spend more than do short-haul visitors. So we have got China, we've got Australia, we've got Saudi Arabia and the UAE all making it into the top 10 back in 2019. Now, country level data is only available until Friday for the first 9 months of last year, which is when we'll get the full year, but we can take a number of learnings from this. The USA still top dog. Germany and France still really important for volume and value. But notice that China has slipped out of the top 10, is now 22nd for volume and 15th for value. So the new kid on the block in terms of making it into the top 10, that has been Canada. So North America has been doing really very well of late. Finally, I can share some data for Ireland, but this is pre-pandemic. It's that quarter of a century up to 2019. And we can definitely see that inbound tourism was a growth industry for the Republic of Ireland. But again, far right of the chart, we can see starting to plateau in 2018, 2019. Over this period, though, inbound to Ireland from Europe had pretty much doubled. From the Americas, it had trebled. And from East Asia and the Pacific, more than quadrupled. Clearly still relatively small proportion of the overall pie, but that's where the really rapid growth had been coming from. Now, since April of last year, there has been much richer data for inbound to Ireland. So here we're looking at the 12 months through to March of this year. First off, looking at where visitors to Ireland are coming from. And we can see very clearly that Great Britain is a very important source market for the Republic of Ireland, ahead of the United States, with the US generating more than 1 million visits for the Republic in the most recent 12-month period. Why do folks go to the Republic of Ireland? Well, just as we saw when we looked at the trend chart for the UK, the most common reason is for a holiday, with more than 2/5 of the overall market, but also visits to friends and relatives, extremely important, accounting for more than 1/3. Let's have a dabble with some aviation data, and figures from Eurocontrol indicate in the week of the 22nd to 28th of April, the average number of daily flights to from the UK was in fact 4% up on the equivalent week of last year, but still 7% lower than where it had been prior to the pandemic. Across Europe as a whole, transatlantic flights were 15% up on 2019 in the most recent week, and Asia Pacific flights volumes, well, they were 3% up. So we're still starting to talk about there being more flights in the sky coming to Europe now than there were 5 years ago. If we look at the busiest long-haul flight pairs for Europe in terms of average daily flights, then the UK to the US is in fact top of that pile, and those volumes are up 2% on 2019. And Ireland to the US also features in this list. It's the 7th busiest long-haul flight pair, with 6% more daily flights than 5 years ago. Now let's talk about forecasts. So what we're seeing here is the forecasts made by Tourism Economics on behalf of the European Travel Commission for outbound travel from each of the world regions this year, next year, and the year after. So these are outbound trips to potentially anywhere, not just, of course, Europe. What we can see is that source markets across Asia Pacific and Oceania, they're still very much recovering from their extended periods of lockdown, which is why the forecast for particularly this year, still really very high. But across all regions, the forecast is that growth will start to abate over the next couple of years, returning to more normal levels. How about the inbound forecast for growth to Northern Europe? So this is inbound to a set of countries that includes the UK and Ireland, but also Iceland, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Denmark. So Tourism Economics are quite upbeat about their inbound to Northern Europe. So almost 10% this year, falling to a bit below 7% next year, and then 4 to 5% the year after. A rather more cautious forecast made by Visit Britain last December was that the volume of inbound tourism to the UK in 2024 would be 5% up on last year. They will be revising that probably in about a month or so's time once that final data for last year is published. So let's talk briefly about that all-important US market, and starting with a look at trends in outbound travel from the US to Europe by US citizens over the last quarter of a century, almost 30 years in fact. We can see that for much of the 90s and early noughties, it was fairly flat, and then really starting to grow in those 4 or 5 years up to 2019. Of course, then plummeted, but a real surge post-pandemic. And the 2023 tally was 5% up on 2019. And we can look at individual monthly data. And if we do that, we find that March this year saw US citizens' departures to Europe 10.4% higher than in March 2019. So a very strong signal that we are looking towards a very good year for inbound from the US. Clearly, Americans consider all sorts of different factors when they're deciding where they're going to go, but one may well be the exchange rate. So what we're looking at here is how much it costs Americans to buy either a pound, the red line, or a euro, the blue line, going all the way back to 2002. If the lines are falling, it means it's getting cheaper for Americans to buy those currencies. And what we can see is that over the last 15 or so years, both Britain and Ireland have become very much more affordable for US visitors. So what are US market prospects? Well, one thing to deal with is this urban myth about Americans not traveling in presidential election years, of which this is, of course, one. But if we look at really long-term data for inbound from the USA to the UK since 1980 through to 2019, because everything gets messed up by the pandemic in 2020, but over those 40 years, the average annual growth rate in non-presidential election years pretty much identical to those when there was an election. More good news, Aer Lingus is expanding its US network, re-establishing its route from Minneapolis-St. Paul, and indeed introducing flights from Denver. Meanwhile, there's good news for Scotland with, in the next week or two, JetBlue launching flights from JFK into Edinburgh Airport. And ETC research suggests that among Americans who are planning travel to Europe in 2024, 27% say their preferred destination is the UK, and 10% are saying Ireland is their preferred destination. So really good results for the two markets we're focusing on, but not quite as strong as the two markets up at the top of the pile, which, as you can see there, were France and Italy. And tourism economics are forecasting that over the next few years, there's going to be into the teens percentage cumulative growth from the US to Europe. So we can certainly, I think, be fairly optimistic that after a stellar year for inbound from the US last year, we ought to be welcoming at least as many, if not more, American visitors in the year ahead. With that, I will stop chairing and allow Tom to have a discussion with the real experts on the panel. Thank you very much.
David, thank you very much indeed. As ever, that was beautifully articulated and very, very clear. The one thing I would say is that from talking to our members, the impression I got is that the organised element of the travelling public, those people who are booking through tour operators, seem to be outperforming the rest of the market. I think most of the members I've been dealing with in 23 comfortably exceeded 2019 levels. This year they're well exceeding it. This comes with the big exception of the Asian markets, which, as we know, are still very suppressed. I think I'll just do a quick tour to tub as to whether people are indeed seeing a recovery, and then we may explore a little bit of what the implications of that recovery are. Jackie, do you mind if I start with you? How do you think the market's recovered for the UK?
Because we're slightly different, we're educational and obviously impacted greatly by the China and the Southeast Asia and long haul market. So I think, sadly, some of our markets we're finding, as David has indicated, are still struggling. But there is recovery. The youth markets in particular, we're seeing a real growth in the youth bookings, which is fantastic. And obviously summer is looming. We're anticipating a very positive summer, however, predominantly from Europe. But again, some markets in Europe, even the Italian market and the Spanish markets, still impacted because of the cost of flights. And our struggle is also capacity in terms of accommodation. So the demand is there, but not as good as we'd hoped, but we do see positive signs for the future. So we're very positive that there is a recovery on the horizon.
That's good. Dermot.
Yeah, same question, Tom. I guess from our perspective, and looking at Ireland primarily, we are seeing strong recovery. Our primary market would be US, North America. And I think if we look at, David just referenced the increased capacity into Ireland, that's really going in our favour. Obviously, the strong dollar, weak euro pound is also in our favour too. And I think, you know, we've sort of shortened the gap between the US and Europe. The fact that we're in the western periphery of Europe makes it very easy for us to get here, for Americans to come here. And speaking the same language as we do, I think we've made our destinations, UK and Ireland, very easy and straightforward, removing any complexities that were or could have been perceived to be there during the pandemic. So certainly, yes, definitely a big recovery over the last 18 months to 24 months.
Well, thank you very much. Connor, you really concentrate slightly more on the upper end. I'd be very interested to hear your perspective.
Yeah, both B2C and B2B are up. And Jackie mentioned a really good point that we're also experiencing in Scotland. For example, on the Isle of Skye today, you would have to spend, if you didn't book 6 months ago, you'd have to spend double to triple the amount of money to go somewhere within 60 to 70 miles. So the accommodation is definitely a big issue at any end of the market. I think there just isn't the capacity to deal with the amount of people that want to go certain places at certain times. Of course, with the role of social media highlighting certain areas, we absolutely love Cornwall, for example. People want to go down and experience botanical gardens, and they want to get away from the hustle and bustle potentially of some of the larger cities. And we really have to be very careful where we choose as accommodations, because we are at that standard. We are at the 4-star plus. And what's nice to see is people coming in and filling those roles as chefs and front of house, and people with experience coming back into the industry as well, I think, which is great, because that was missing over the last couple of years. But certainly trends are changing. Capacity is the big issue. Everything has to be booked a long time in advance. And the clients that are really benefiting are the ones who are booking 6, 12, 18 months in advance. They're the clients that are getting the best experience. Because, you know, as anyone here knows, it takes a long time to organize as close as you can get to a perfect vacation, a perfect holiday. And my advice to anyone would be book in advance, secure your accommodations, secure your quality driver guides or guides and drivers. And that just requires a lot of planning in advance. Once that planning is done, you're guaranteed a great trip. But yeah, it's a very interesting time in the industry, and definitely it has come back with a lot of strength. I think it's growing and growing throughout the UK and Ireland.
Yeah, it was very interesting during the crisis of COVID. We were speculating how the recovery would look. We were thinking it might be a gradual thing like the dawn, or it would be like the sun coming out from behind a cloud. It's been the sun coming out from behind a cloud. Suddenly, we've moved into full capacity mode. Vera, you're very much on the European wing of this. Be fascinated to hear your opinion.
Actually, I can share. I share the opinions which have been shared before, but I think 23 was predominantly about the shorter haul markets like Germany, France, Spain, Italy. We see this year a far stronger demand from the long haul market, whether it's be Taiwan or whether it's the US, Canada, but also the Latin American markets, predominantly Argentina and Brazil. So there is a recovery there. The cost have been an issue because, B2B, the demand is high and higher than almost back to 2019 level, if not higher. But then the conversion of the end consumer traveling in the end, because the costs are so high, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to convince them to travel. So we see a bit of a conversion there, that the conversion of booking from our clients is very high, but then we lose some of the business because there's not enough end consumer demand.
It's a really tricky one. I suppose the to a certain extent the landscape on one level is obvious at the moment. We've got demand broadly that we've never experienced before. The real question is, what do we do with it? If I could return to Dermot a second, Do you think there is any pressure to find alternatives in terms of destinations? I mean, are people switching from the main honeypot destinations to the lesser known ones simply because there is capacity there?
I think so, Tom, and I think the tourist board here, certainly in Ireland, are looking at what they call regionality and seasonality to try and elongate the season, move people, move the pressure points away from Blarney Castle, Cliffs of Moher, Ring of Kerry, those kind of things, and bring them further north. And I think from an island of Ireland perspective, we've been quite well served. I think with the north opening up in the last, say 10 years, there's much more interest in Belfast through Titanic, through Game of Thrones experiences, and then further north up at the Causeway Coast New Visitor Centre and everything that's gone on in the development around there. So the infrastructure on the ground, especially in Ireland here, has afforded that opportunity. But people still do want to see Dublin to this. Do still want to see Galway, or do the Ring of Kerry and whatever else. Looking across the water, I think Scotland and Conor mentioned Isle of Skye, and I think the benefit of us as a DMC is that we get our rates in, we get them out to market. We have our programs in with our partners, and they open up well in advance. So, say for our primary market in the US, for example, they typically have it far in advance, although patterns have changed post-COVID, and we are seeing a lot of last-minute demand too. So, yes, there's pressure on supply, but I think there are more and more areas opening up, and even in England, for example, we're doing a lot of work in Devon, Cornwall, even looking at Wales now as well going forward too. So you'll be pleased to hear that, Tom.
Speaking as the token Welshman, I always like the phrase "even Wales." And David,
sorry, I don't mean it that way.
There's another token Welshman in the background is smiling broadly. I think you raised the point of Cornwall, and Cornwall has been almost a bête noire for the German market for many years. Vera, what is the situation in Cornwall? Indeed, do you find that people are choosing alternatives, or do they still have to go where they want to go?
Well, I think, we've tried to diverse a little bit outside of London, outside of Cornwall for years, and then obviously the pandemic hit as well. I think definitely has been done a lot of awareness creation as well within the market. So I guess, and we still need to continue this, whether it's Ireland or whether it's the UK. I guess a lot of areas are just not known. And when we look at the tour operators in Germany, there's a shift obviously as well. You have generation change, then you have potentially workforce which has been exchanged due to the pandemic, and they're not expert for the destination. So that's a bit our job as well, to educate also that it's not necessarily only need to travel in summer, that the shoulder season and even the winter season can be quite attractive as well. So yes, we see some demand to other areas, and also some being driven by like, for example, film and movie themes, where there are areas where there is a demand from a slightly younger generation to go and visit the locations. But I think there's far more we still need to do as an industry in order to educate and raise the demand for the other areas and other times of year to travel.
I'm not sure how one does it. Conor, are you finding people switching destination at all, given the unprecedented level of demand for the mainly honeypot areas?
It is really interesting. I think that we have a lot of repeat business coming back year after year to certain areas. But what you find is their clients are asking them to go somewhere different. So you're having to find places, go out and search. Most people are coming into London Heathrow or Edinburgh or Dublin Airport, and so you've got to put together an itinerary. We do so much in the West Midlands. There's so much in the Midlands of England, for example, Devon, Dorset, the South Coast is very, very popular as well. But what you're trying to do for us, it's literally trying to find the attraction first, because a lot of these counties are not known. And actually, that's quite an investment of time and quite a lot of relationship building as well. So what we found is going to some of these events, we're meeting the right kind of attraction. It may be a stately home, it may be a castle, it may be, they can offer special experiences with the head gardener, the architect, or the owner. And many of these places are in unknown counties that we would know, that all of us here would know. but not necessarily the foreign market. So I think one of the most important thing is getting to find your boutique hotels, your castle hotels, your special attractions, your stately homes with unique experiences in counties that are between airports or that are maybe not as used so much. And that really helps with availability. It really helps to give something special because they're quite eager to please as well. And so they're willing to go the extra mile to give your clients the benefit of new and exciting places. And England, just to take England as an example, England is full of these stately homes, National Trust, castles, family-run places, and many. I don't want to say they're all as good as Blenheim Castle or Blenheim Palace, but there are phenomenal places to visit, and some of them are great places because you can do your lunch, you can have a tour with the head gardener, and then you can have free time in the gardens as well. So it could be an experience. It could be a 3-4 hour experience. And there are hidden gems that are of an unparalleled quality. I just take England as an example because there's so many of these places that are unknown. And that's what we're kind of focusing on at the moment, areas that are a bit unknown, but still have the quality.
Indeed. Jackie, are you finding that your clients are prepared to move to either destination or seasonally? I mean, I've heard...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we're positively trying to encourage some of our B2B clients to look at different dates, as Vera said, to try and lengthen the season to enable the capacity, because we really do struggle. And for us, some markets do tend to book a year in advance, but we're finding that we're already full. And as Dermot has said, it's also trying to, and Connor, it's trying to educate, not educate, but try and convince some suppliers like hotels, for instance, to accept youth groups, that they can actually still yield the same type of return with groups, and looking at cities, towns outside major cities as destinations. So yes, we're trying to do that. We find we absolutely have to try and not say no to the business. Capacity is so scarce.
Indeed, it's a real trick because tour operators add value when suppliers need the business. If the suppliers don't need the business, we're immediately running in to difficulties in terms of placement. But we have a couple of questions coming through, so thank you, audience, for giving us questions. This is most important. Firstly, I will. The first question we've got is, what is the measure of value at the top 10 source markets? I'll come back to that if I may. I'm just going to, David Clear has come through saying, wondering if the panel see 2023 as being a revenge tourism year, and we saw inflated results as a result of that. 2024 seems to be a bit softer, so perhaps plateauing for many reasons. Is that the case? This is a question from Dublin. I'm going to start with Vera, if I may. Do you think 23 was a revenge tourism year, and we're now seeing the foot come off the demand accelerator?
No, actually, I don't think so. I think for us, 24 and 25 look actually better than 23. I felt, but also I think when you look at the recovery from the markets throughout the pandemic, our source markets didn't recover as quickly as the UK, for example, did recover. I just predominantly, I mean, even when you look at Germany, I mean, when I traveled to see my family, they were all still wearing masks, where we were all running around freely here already. So I think that I think so. We had definitely a recovery year in 23, but we see the demand still growing for the coming years. And I mean, what of this materialize, we will need to see, but I think it looks very promising.
Connor, well, what's your impression of this?
I think that I don't see it as, I didn't see last year as a revenge tourism year. I thought maybe part of 2022, certainly there were kind of blowout experiences where people were spending quite a lot of money on trips of a lifetime. And money really wasn't an issue in many cases. They just wanted very, very special experiences. Actually, I think that general geopolitics makes the UK and Ireland a very safe and secure place to go. And if you look at what's happening in other parts of the world right now, there are many, many places outside Europe which, frankly, even any of us in the tourism industry wouldn't necessarily want to go to. So, while it's very, very saddening and very bad for those areas, I think people are making decisions to come and visit Europe, UK, and Ireland because they're safe, because they're familiar with it, and our job is simply to find new trends, new things new places for these people to go and experience it in a different way. But that certainly benefits us, I think.
And Dermot, do you think this is the case?
I still think there's pent up demand. I think 23 was a stellar year, and particularly from our markets, North America for sure. I think 24 continues to see pent up demand. I do see a softening, and I also, looking at the various feedback from the tourist boards, they are saying that there's a slowdown, slight slowdown. I don't think it's anything to be worried about, and I think David's figures as well going into 25 and 6 look positive. But I think a bit of a slowdown in that the pent up demand is probably through the system and washed out. Any latent vouchers or COVID vouchers or credits that were there have most likely been spent. But I do also, and I'd love to see the research from the consumer on the ground in, say, the US, for example, or Canada, whatever it is, to understand what their motives are for traveling, and why Europe or why Ireland, UK, for example. I think that would give us a lot of insight. But as far as we can see, there's still a lot of demand, and people are coming for longer, spending more. They want to really, the multi-gen trips are extremely strong and continue to be extremely strong. So that increases spend, more rooms, and typically in the higher room categories rather than, run of house rooms across the board too. And most likely private chauffeur services throughout, whether that be Ireland or UK, or combination tours as well. We're seeing a lot of combination, UK and Ireland, Scotland, Ireland too. So it's softer slightly, but I don't see it slowing down, or certainly not grinding.
Not at the moment. Jackie, was revenge tourism a big factor for your market?
Well, not so much, because I think we have different barriers. Our biggest barrier is, as I said earlier, is capacity. But for us, we saw a big decline in we have seen a big decline in Dublin this year. We have language schools, by the way. London is in decline this year. Dublin was in massive growth last year, and that's also in decline, but predominantly because of capacity issues, predominantly because we cannot find youth accommodation at the right price. So we are very much struggling. So our focus really to enable growth is to do, as Dermot said, to look at, and Connor, to look at other alternatives. So my big focus at the moment is trying to build relationships with hotels and all types of accommodation providers to see if we can build it. So for us, if we can get the accommodation, we can then have the groups. So
is that way? I think I feel that what happened in 23 there was a bit of revenge tourism taking place, but what we forget is that 2020 was going to be a record year from North America coming to Europe. All my members were posting forward bookings, the like of which they'd never seen before COVID hit. And what that translated into was a massive quantity of tour credits. They were allowed to issue tour credits rather than give refunds. And I think in 23, we saw all those tour credits being cashed in, on top of 3 years of pent-up demand, on top of 3 years of savings, all wanting to be spent on an experience that they hadn't had for 3 years. Whether this amounts to revenge tourism, I don't know, but I think what we got was a huge sugar rush in 23. And if you want to get a business started again, what you want is lots of clients coming and spending money. And that's what we got. I think we got the perfect start to kickstart the industry again, and we reached it. We've now got problems with it, which is what you're pointing out in terms of capacity. Now, someone raised before the webinar the point of luxury, and I know I've got certainly several. Everybody probably thinks they do luxury on one level or not, but is luxury, going up market, something that the market is responding to? I'm actually going to start with Connor, because it would be interesting to hear your perspective before I ask the others. Connor, is luxury the future for the UK?
We were mentioning earlier on about these palaces and these stately homes. The infrastructure is already there. Mm-hmm. The boutique hotels, they're already there. This is a country with a great number of people who travel domestically and go away for weekends and enjoy spa breaks. So these hotels are there. The connections are fantastic. The road infrastructure is great. within a couple of hours, you're in any of these places. So the infrastructure is there. And what I've seen is a lot more, I've been to some of these events down in Wembley and obviously ETOA around that weekend, a lot of spin-off events. And a lot of these places are putting themselves forward into that space because they know that the market is there. They know that they're coming to the UK and Ireland. Certainly for us, what we find is it's just easier to work with 4-star plus and 4-star premium and castles and boutique hotels. We find that obviously when so many people left the sector in 2020, 2021, both from the kitchen, front of house, staff, that obviously had an impact on the quality experiences that people were enjoying. And so we feel that the people who are now in the boutique hotels, who are in these castle properties, they're the ones who are able to deliver excellence, and they're able to deliver attention to detail. And that's what our clients want. They want to feel special. It's not really a question of how much does it cost. It's, I want to be treated well. I want to be, if someone sees that my coffee is empty, I want them to spot that from 20 yards away. I want them to come over. I want them to give me great service. There are places like that, and they're fabulous properties. They're old priories, old abbeys, old churches. The history in this country is phenomenal. There are some of these properties that are 300, 400, 500, 600 years old. They have 20, 30, 40 rooms. And so for us as a luxury DMC, it's fabulous because the list of places that you can choose is endless. It's just discovering them, and it's building the relationship. As Jackie said, that's really important, is building the relationship with them. So going down there in person, meeting the management team, doing a site inspection, following up, saying this is the kind of traveler we have, sending your first group, listening to the feedback from the first group that goes there, what can be improved on, and all of a sudden then they know the kind of travelers you have and you can bring repeat business. So it is very much a relationship thing. It may take a year, 2 years, 3 years to build, but as long as those sites keep coming forward and keep presenting themselves, we'll be very happy to work with them. We absolutely love working with those historic cultural palaces, boutique hotels, abbey, priory places that they just have it in their bones. They have it in their DNA, and that's what our clients want. They want that special cultural contact, and they want the attention to detail. And we're very happy that the UK and Ireland both have plenty of those properties that are kind of below the radar, but you can find them.
But I think you ought to be doing a recording for Tourism Ireland and Visit Britain. That's heartening, I think, is the right saying.
Yeah.
And Dermot, are you finding that there is increasing demand for the luxury sector?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think post-COVID, I think you talked about increased spend and the perfect storm, etc. I think people wanted to spend on luxury, but I think it's important to note, particularly from the supply side, that luxury is all about the experience as much as it is, having the top suite in the 5-star hotel in London or in Dublin or Edinburgh or Cardiff or wherever it is. It's all about delivering an experience. And Conor hit the nail on the head. It's the personal approach. People want to meet the British or meet the Irish, meet the Scots when they come here, and to have a really unique experience in destination, and not something that they can find through a Google search or something that they can find in New York, LA, or wherever it is they're coming from. So it's all about the hands-on approach, personal touch, and unique experience to destination.
That's a big point. Vera, is this something you're finding too?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't declare it necessarily as a new trend. I mean, our FIT department, as well as our meetings and incentives department, have always dealt with this luxury side of it. And as Dermot said, I think it's a lot about the immersive experience and really experience a country as it really is. And that goes aligned with the sustainability view as well, which becomes more and more popular in especially at the moment. And I think we feel that it's more like even meeting the locals, buying from a local community, and that's being perceived as a luxury travel already in its own. But then obviously having, as Conor said, the accommodation which supports that and the service which sits behind that. So I think it's not necessarily a new trend, but I guess it's maybe growing a bit further, especially with the sustainability angle behind it.
I think that's a very good point. Jackie, before I come on to you, I think with my Asian hat on, not that I have an Asian hat, but we're light on Asia. Asia represents a very important market for the UK. The luxury market exists for Asia, but the UK has to realise, if I may make that kind of sweeping statement, that for a lot of Asian guests, buying super luxury is not a very good buy when you come to Europe. This is not just the UK. You can buy outstanding service and luxury in India, for example, for 150 euros a night, and for them paying the difference between an adequate 4-star hotel and a super luxury hotel for 5 stars in Europe could be 600 or 700 euros a night. And it's very questionable for them whether it's worth that money when they can buy that experience locally. So a lot of people are opting not to spend money on accommodation, but to spend it on other things. And this is a sort of pattern we're seeing evolving in Asia. It's not certain, and there are lots of people in Asia for whom I won't say money is no object, but it doesn't matter them too much if they're spending 300 euros a night on a room or 800 euros a night on a room. But these people are not very thick on the ground. Most of these people are careful customers, and they know exactly what they want to buy, and they know exactly what they want to get. And one last point, when it comes to the Asians, if you're offering 5-star service at 900 euros or 900 pounds a night, you've got to deliver 900 pounds a night worth of service, because they will let you know about any shortcomings in your delivery for that. Sorry, Jackie, I've butted in because the other side of this question wasn't just luxury, which you may well be involved in, but you're certainly involved in adventure of one description or another. And I'm just wondering how much adventure tourism is, if there's an increasing interest in your market.
Absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely, everything we do is bespoke, but it's very important that if you imagine parents sending students for a long haul trip or for an educational program, it needs to be more than just vanilla English or visit the Houses of Parliament. It has to be a lot more. It needs to be cultural. There needs to be real learning from it and immersion. Everything we do it's very much tailored, but it has to be different. We can't just offer everything we did 2 or 3 years ago. It needs to be very high-end, competitive and well executed. So I agree with Vera, with Connor, with Dermot, with all of my colleagues, the panel, with regards to adding that added value is so important, and just delivering on your promise. You have to deliver, because they won't return. There are many markets that expect a lot and they're hard to work with, but if you want to retain that market, you need to give them what they want. So absolutely. I'm afraid we're not, executive high end, but we do still have those principles throughout. Yeah.
David, I've got a question here for you, which is you listed the top 10 source markets for value. How do you measure value? Is it just spend, or is it?
Yeah, and so value there was shorthand for visitor spending, and it is absolutely true that value can be different things to different people. So you could say that you get more value from a market that is willing to travel to parts of Ireland or Great Britain that many tourists don't go to, because you're getting that regional spread or indeed seasonal spread. So in that context, it was simply a pound sign at the top of the column rather than being more nuanced with what we mean by value.
And it's spend both in terms of what they're booking before they come, in terms of the accommodation and the services and the shopping as well?
In terms of any destination capturing visitor spend data, but the attempt that the ONS make is to establish the spend that will accrue to Britain or to the destination. So it excludes the cost of their travel to and from the UK, but if they have pre-purchased stuff and there's going to be a chunk of that package that will end up in revenue of UK PLC, that would fit within that value column.
Okay, that is the answer. Thank you very much indeed. Now we've got a question here from someone who I could answer this question, but I'm going to with an obvious. Actually, I will start by posing the question, answering it, and then lobbing it out to my panel. Because as a small accommodation supplier, think boutique 5-star experience. I would like to ask the panel, what is the best way to work B2B for reservations? So 2 questions. How do we make ourselves known to you? And that's to Connor. Second part of questions, we basically work email on capacity, but is there a better way or a preferred online booking system? I think recommending online booking systems probably a bit outside our remit on this thing, because there are other online booking systems, many of whom are ETOA members, so I've got to be very careful in that area. But I'd be very interested to know the first answer, and I'll do that. If you want to meet lots of DMCs, destination marketing companies, the Britain and Ireland Marketplace, as advertised at the beginning of this event, is a perfectly good venue to do so, where you will find at least 200 people who would be happy to talk to you. But I think, I suppose it's really a general question to hotels. What do you want from hotels, I suppose, Jackie, other than availability and the right price?
Well, availability, the right price, what do we want, the service, to actually also understand the industry that we're in, because we do have different needs, but and to recognise that it's a very important industry. Youth, everything we do, my twin and I, it's always about youth. Even our UK government contracts, it's about how do we help young people. And you know, Connor mentioned some of it, how great it is to see some of these young apprentices coming through, because we deal with apprenticeship training also, getting young people into through hospitality and into hotels. So it's wonderful to see that. So it's about providing opportunity. So I think it's about providing the opportunity to actually welcome those groups.
Dermot? What's your perfect hotel?
We won't name names, Tom, here, but I think, you know, you hit the nail on the head, Jackie. Also, competitive rate, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be rock bottom, of course, but availability is key. I think the biggest challenge, and it's been alluded to already, is trying to get space, and it has been squeezed post-COVID. So we've had less supply, particularly in Ireland with the humanitarian crisis and the government contracts, etc. But an understanding also of our business and the business that we bring to them. I think one of the other challenges post-COVID was the shortage of experienced hotel staff. And I think you know, the industry bodies across the UK and Ireland have been doing a lot of work to try and upskill a lot of people and bring in more experience. And I think if we could really go back to how easy it was to work pre-COVID, and where the inventory was probably challenged, but not so much as it is now, that would be the ideal. I think more hotels on stream also, particularly in the pinch points, which probably goes against everything we're saying in terms of sustainability and trying to get into regionality and things like that. But like I also did say at the top of the conversation, people will still want London. People still will want Edinburgh, Dublin, and the honeypots. So it's trying to, I think, understand and work with us, understand our long lead time, particularly in the markets that we operate in personally as well. I think recognition of that is critical going forward.
Thank you. Vera?
Yeah, I think, I mean, we see hotel as our partners like every other supplier we work with. So I think it's literally as if they're part of our own group, basically. And I think it needs to be a hand-in-hand approach. So understanding as well whether they can cater for FIT groups, meetings and incentives. Is there car parking? What are they doing about sustainability? I mean, Dermot just mentioned it. I mean, we get bookings like for 25, 26 right now. So, I mean, looking ahead, I mean, whether the rates can be available. Are they ready? Are they trade ready? Do they need any support from us to educate them? And I mean, Visit Britain, for example, did this massive training and educational piece a few years ago with getting getting hotels and suppliers trade ready. And I think the key is reach out, let's have a conversation and see whether we can work together. But also understanding from a marketing plan, which source markets do they want to go after? I mean, we work with over 40 source markets. I mean, we potentially can tailor towards a certain market better than to others. And I think it's just, I think understanding of our business, but also giving us the information to understand them, having potentially marketing materials like videos, images ready. And I'm talking with my marketing head on right now. because if we work together, it will help to promote them outside as well.
Okay. Connor.
I think everything that's been said is very interesting. Vera mentioned what we need to promote them. That's really important. What the clients need when they're on the ground is memorable experiences, that they want to take pictures of the hotel. They want to feel that this is typically Irish or English or Welsh or Scottish. But it may be a fireplace, somebody with an accent, the malt whiskey they have at the bar that's special, that has a story behind it. And actually that's a great thing, because then, you know, your social media presence, they'll take a picture of that, the afternoon tea. So you need to create a story. You have to have a story. It's, you know, without people, it's just a building, isn't it? And without product, it's just a building. So if you have a historic hotel, or you have a small boutique hotel that was built 300 years ago, and it has some Tudor architecture, it has some turrets coming out of it, that's the base to work with. And then it's just a matter of having characters. It's just amazing. In Scotland, we had clients recently, and they were at a really nice place just outside Inverness, and they had afternoon tea. And the thing they remembered most from 12 days in the UK was the person they met having the afternoon tea. So I think it's about stories for people. It's about creating memories. It's about having Instagrammable or social media ready a destination which people can go back with, share with friends and family, and then that they can communicate with the tour operators that they're using and saying, by the way, this was our favorite hotel because we remember person A, B, C, and we had certain experiences at the hotel. So I think that's key as well, that if we're going to work with a hotel, we have to be able to, or an accommodation provider, we have to be able to say, we trust these people 100% to deliver the same level of service that we would want to give to the client. And so that handing over is a question of trust. It's saying, are you going to be able to take care of their individual needs as well as we would? We want to trust the supplier that we work with, and we want to be able to say, yes, we're going to hand over, we're not going to worry, because we know that accommodation is going to take care of our client.
Fantastic. Well, look, we're reaching nearly the end of this webinar. I'm going to ask everyone a question to which I need 2-word answers. And I'm going to ask you, one, is there a destination that you think is going to be growing in 2026? And is there a market that's going to be growing in 2026? Just destination and market, there's 2 questions. And I'm going to start with David, because he's very good at plucking 2 words out of thin air. David, over to you.
Montenegro and India.
Montenegro being the destination. I'm trying to think of one in the UK, if you could think of an area of the UK. Rather than Montenegro is always a good bet.
Manchester.
Manchester, okay. And India, you said?
Yes.
Excellent. Dermot.
Wales and Canada.
Wales and Canada, fantastic. Vera.
Sorry, I had the microphone on mute. I say the North. I'm with David on Manchester, and I'm with Dermot on Canada.
Okay. And Connor?
Northumbria and Mexico.
Oh,
Wow, what an amazing combination. But I agree. Jackie?
I'm so shocked he said Northumbria, because I was in the Northeast last week, and I was blown away at the amazing opportunities there. So for me, it would be the Northeast or Newcastle area upon Tyne. Also Canada.
Ladies and gentlemen, the great virtue of being a chairman is I don't have to put myself on the spot, so I'm not going to get drawn on this. Can I just thank the panel? There is no green room on Zoom, so it's my opportunity now to thank everybody. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom over the last hour, and thank you, audience. Thank you for staying with us. Look forward to talking to you again at the next webinar. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Tom.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Nice
you,
to
everybody.
meet you.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Nice to meet you, Vera. Nice to meet you, Dermot, Connor.
You too. Thanks, Jackie.
Have a good week,
Slán.
rest of the week.
Slán,
Bye.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.